December 23rd, 1944, 2:14 p.m., somewhere over Germany. Lieutenant Charlie Ross's B-17 bomber is on fire. Both port engines are dead. The starboard wing is shredded by flak. Hydraulics are gone. The cockpit is filling with smoke. Below him, snow-covered German countryside, enemy territory in every direction. His crew is already bailing out. He can see parachutes drifting down through the smoke. Ross has maybe 2 minutes before the aircraft breaks apart. Standard procedure: bail out, hope for the best, spend the rest of the war in a German POW camp. But Ross looks down and sees something that changes everything. Directly below his dying bomber is a German village. Maybe 200 people. Wooden houses clustered together. A church with a steeple. Smoke rising from chimneys. Families celebrating Christmas Eve early, the way Germans do. If Ross bails out now, his 35-ton bomber will crash directly into that village. The fuel tanks are still half full. The bomb bay still has 2 500-pound bombs that didn't release over the target. The aircraft will hit those houses like a meteor. Everyone in that village will die. The mathematics are simple. Bail out and save himself. Or stay with the aircraft, try to steer it away from the village, and probably die in the crash. Charlie Ross makes his decision in less than 3 seconds. He stays in the cockpit, grabs the controls, points the nose away from the village, and rides his burning bomber down. What happens next will take less than 90 seconds. The aircraft will hit the ground. Ross will survive, barely. And the German villagers whose lives he just saved will have to decide: execute the American pilot who bombed their country, or save the man who saved them. This is the story of the enemy who became a hero. The bomber pilot who crashed to save the people he was supposed to kill, and the German village that spent 60 years trying to repay a debt they could never fully settle. Charlie Ross was born February 14, 1921, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, oil country. His father worked the rigs, came home every night covered in crude, smelling like petroleum and sweat. Good money for Depression-era Oklahoma, enough to keep the family fed when half the state was starving. Charlie was the youngest of 4 brothers. All of them joined up when Pearl Harbor happened. 2 went Army infantry, 1 went Navy. Charlie went Army Air Corps because he'd always loved flying, or rather, the idea of flying. He'd never been in an aircraft before enlisting. Tulsa didn't have an airport in 1941. The closest Charlie had come to aviation was watching crop dusters working the fields outside town. But the Air Corps needed pilots desperately. They'd take anyone with decent reflexes and the ability to learn. Charlie qualified, barely. Flight training was brutal. 60% of candidates washed out. Some because they couldn't handle the aircraft. Some because they got airsick every time they went up. Some because they panicked the first time an instructor put the plane into a spin. Charlie passed. Not at the top of his class. Middle of the pack. Good enough to get bomber assignment. B-17 Flying Fortresses, the backbone of America's strategic bombing campaign against Germany. By October 1944, Charlie was a first lieutenant, aircraft commander of Lucky Lady, a B-17G stationed at RAF Kimballton in England. His crew, 9 men, most younger than him, all terrified and trying not to show it. The life expectancy of a B-17 crew over Germany was 12 missions. Charlie's crew had flown 23. They were living on borrowed time, and everyone knew it. December 23rd, 1944. Mission number 24. Target: rail yards at Gießen, Germany. Strategic objective: disrupt German supply lines, prevent reinforcements from reaching the Battle of the Bulge. The briefing officer didn't mention that Gießen was deep in German territory. Didn't mention that the route would take them over some of the heaviest anti-aircraft defenses in Europe. Didn't need to. Everyone knew. Takeoff, 600 hours. 300 B-17s forming up over England, black against the pre-dawn sky. Ross's aircraft, Lucky Lady, was in the middle of the formation, safer there. Fighter escorts could protect the formation center better than the edges. The flight to Germany took 3 hours. 3 hours of waiting. 3 hours of watching other aircraft, wondering which ones wouldn't make it back. 3 hours of trying not to think about flak and fighters and fire. They crossed into German airspace at 0900. Anti-aircraft fire started immediately. Black puffs of smoke appearing around them, each one representing shrapnel that could shred an aircraft. You couldn't dodge it. You just flew straight, held formation, and hoped. Lucky Lady made it to the target. Bomb bay doors opened. Bombardier took control. Bombs away. The aircraft lurched upward, suddenly 6,000 pounds lighter. Then they turned for home. That's when it went wrong. Flak doesn't sound like you'd expect. In movies, it's dramatic explosions. In reality, it's sharp metallic bangs as shrapnel punctures aluminum. Sometimes you don't hear anything, just feel the aircraft shudder and know you've been hit. Lucky Lady took 3 direct hits in 15 seconds. The first hit killed the number 2 engine. The port inner engine just stopped, propeller windmilling uselessly. Ross feathered it, turned the blades edge on to reduce drag, and compensated with the other 3 engines. The second hit shredded the starboard wing, punched holes the size of basketballs through the wing surface. The aircraft started losing altitude. Ross pushed the throttles forward, trying to maintain airspeed. The third hit was the killing blow. It struck the number 1 engine, port outer, and the engine caught fire, not a small fire. A roaring inferno fed by aviation fuel, burning so hot, Ross could feel the heat through the cockpit wall. "Fire in number 1, the co-pilot screamed. Unnecessary. Ross could see it. Everyone could see it. He hit the fire suppression. CO2 flooded the engine compartment. The fire guttered, seemed to go out, then roared back twice as strong. The fire suppression system was designed for small fires, electrical fires, not for this. "We're losing altitude," the co-pilot again. Also unnecessary. The altimeter was unwinding like a broken watch. 18,000 feet. 17,000. 16,000. Ross tried to hold the aircraft level. 2 engines gone. Wing damaged. Fire spreading. The bomber was dying beneath him. "Prepare to bail out," he ordered over the intercom. Standard procedure. Aircraft fatally damaged. Crew evacuates. Pilot follows last. He watched his crew bail out. The bombardier went first, tumbling out the nose hatch. Then the navigator, the waist gunners, the tail gunner, the radio operator.
In September
One by
7th,
one,
1950.
parachutes blossomed below the aircraft.
First time I
9
flew in
men,
an airplane
his crew, his responsibility,
was,
all safely away.
1926.
Ross was alone. Altitude,
Occasion
8,000
was,
feet, still
at the
dropping.
county fair,
The fire had
a
spread to the
guy
wing fuel tanks.
had a Ford
The entire port
tri-motor
wing was burning now.
that,
He should bail
was
out.
giving people
Textbook
ride
procedure.
for $1.
Aircraft doomed.
Single
Crew
wing,
evacuated. Pilot abandons aircraft.
3 engines.
Then he looked down. Through the smoke and
looked like it was
flames,
made
Ross
out
saw
of,
the village. It wasn't large.
corrugated
Maybe
roofing.
50 houses clustered around a church. Farms on the outskirts. A single road running through the center. Smoke rising from chimneys. Christmas decorations visible even from 8,000 feet. Wreaths on doors, lights in windows. His aircraft was headed directly toward it. Ross did the calculation instantly. 35 tons of aircraft. 2,000 gallons of remaining fuel. 2 500-pound bombs still in the bay. They'd failed to release over the target. If this bomber hit that village, it would be catastrophic. The explosion would level everything within 200 yards of impact. The fire would spread. People would die. He could bail out now, save himself. Let the aircraft crash wherever it crashed. Maybe it would miss the village. Probably it wouldn't. Or he could stay. Try to steer it clear. Probably die in the attempt. Charlie Ross was 23 years old. He had a girlfriend back in Tulsa. Had plans for after the war, maybe college on the GI Bill, maybe taking over his father's oil rig operation. Had a whole life ahead of him. He also had 3 seconds to decide. Ross grabbed the controls, pushed the yoke forward, aimed the nose away from the village. The aircraft responded sluggishly. With 2 engines out and 1 wing on fire, it didn't want to turn, didn't want to do anything except fall out of the sky. "Come on," Ross muttered, pulled harder on the yoke. The aircraft banked slightly. Not enough. The village was still in his flight path. Altitude, 4,000 feet. He pushed harder, put all his weight into it. The yoke moved another inch. The aircraft's nose swung further left. Away from the village, toward open fields, 3,000 feet. The fire was in the cockpit now. Smoke so thick he could barely see the instruments, heat blistering the paint on the control panel. His hands were burning where they gripped the yoke. 2,000 feet. The village slipped past his left wing. He'd done it. Cleared the houses, cleared the church, saved them. Now he just had to survive the crash. 1,000 feet. Too late to bail out. Too low. Too slow. The parachute wouldn't have time to open. 500 feet. Ross braced himself, pulled back on the yoke, trying to level the aircraft for impact. If he hit nose first, he'd die instantly. If he could flatten it out, belly land, maybe. The ground rushed up. Lucky Lady hit the frozen field at 180 miles per hour. The impact was beyond description. Every bone in Ross's body felt like it shattered. The cockpit crushed forward, instrument panel slamming into his chest. The windscreen exploded inward, showering him with glass. The aircraft skidded across the field, tearing itself apart. The tail section separated. Both wings ripped off. The fuselage tumbled, rolled, disintegrated. Ross was thrown forward, backward, sideways, lost all sense of direction. The world was noise and pain and chaos. Then silence. Ross opened his eyes. He was hanging upside down, still strapped into his seat. The cockpit was gone, just twisted metal and snow and sky where walls should be. The aircraft had broken in half. He was in the front section, lying in a frozen field, looking at German sky. He tried to move. Mistake. Pain exploded through his left leg. Broken, definitely. Maybe both legs. His ribs hurt. His head hurt. Everything hurt. But he was alive. Barely. He fumbled with his harness, got it unlatched, fell into the snow. The cold was shocking after the heat of the fire. He lay there, breathing hard, trying to assess damage. Left leg, broken below the knee. Right leg, maybe sprained, maybe broken, hard to tell. Ribs, at least 3 broken. Head, gashed, bleeding heavily. Arms, functional. That was something. He looked around. The aircraft was scattered across maybe 400 yards, pieces everywhere. The tail section was burning. The wings had sheared off and were scattered like giant metal leaves. Bombs had somehow not exploded. Small miracle. No village. He'd cleared it. The crash site was in open fields, half a mile from the nearest houses. He'd done it. Saved them. Now what? The Germans arrive. Ross didn't have to wait long. Within 10 minutes, he heard voices. German voices. Shouting. Getting closer. He tried to stand. Failed. The leg wouldn't support weight. He tried to crawl. Managed maybe 10 feet before the pain became overwhelming. So he waited. Pulled his service pistol, a .45 automatic he'd carried for 23 missions and never fired, and laid it in the snow beside him. Surrender gesture. Hands empty. Weapon visible, but not threatening. The Germans arrived. 10 of them, maybe 15. Civilians mostly. Men in work clothes, carrying hunting rifles and pitchforks. A few were younger. Boys really, maybe 16, trying to look tough. One older man, maybe the village mayor or priest, trying to keep order. They stopped when they saw Ross, formed a semicircle around him, weapons pointed but uncertain. One of the younger Germans said something in German. Ross didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Who are you? What are you doing here? Ross raised his hands slowly. American, he said. Pilot, bomber pilot. He pointed at the wreckage. My aircraft. The older German stepped forward. He spoke some English. You bombed German cities, killed German people. Now you are here. Why we not kill you? Fair question. Ross thought about lying, making up some story. But he was too tired and hurt too much, so he told the truth. I saw your village, he said, each word hurting his broken ribs. My aircraft was going to crash into it. I stayed in the cockpit, steered it away, saved your village. Then I crashed here. The Germans looked at each other, spoke in rapid German. Ross caught some words. Dorf, village, Absturz, crash, pilot, but couldn't follow the conversation. The older German turned back. You save our village? Why? We are enemy. Ross thought about that. Why had he done it? Training didn't cover this. The Air Corps taught you to bomb targets, survive flak, bail out if necessary. Nobody taught you to sacrifice yourself for enemy civilians. Because your people, Ross finally said. I saw your houses, your church, Christmas decorations. I saw people down there. I couldn't just let my aircraft kill them, even if you're German. More discussion in German. Longer this time. Some of the younger men looked angry. The older man looked thoughtful. Finally, the older German made a decision. He said something in German. 2 men lowered their weapons, came forward, lifted Ross carefully. He screamed. The legs shifted and pain exploded, but they were gentle as possible. "We take you to village," the older German said. "Doctor, see your injuries, then we decide." "Decide what?" Ross asked, though he knew. "Decide if you live," the German said simply. The village. They carried Ross into the village on a makeshift stretcher. A barn door, basically. Every step jarred his broken leg. By the time they reached the church, Ross had passed out from pain. He woke in a bed, clean sheets, warm room. Confused, he looked around. A small bedroom, simply furnished. A cross on the wall, a window showing snow-covered rooftops. An elderly woman sat beside the bed. She spoke no English, but her presence was calming. When Ross stirred, she called out in German. Footsteps. The older German from the field appeared. "You are awake. Good. I am Father Wilhelm. This is my church, my village. You are in the rectory." "Why am I not in a prison camp?" Ross asked. Father Wilhelm smiled grimly. "That is being discussed. The village is divided. Some want to hand you over to the Wehrmacht. Some want to execute you themselves. You are bomber pilot, yes? You have bombed German cities?" "Yes," Ross admitted. "No point lying." "Some want to kill you for that, but others—" Father Wilhelm paused. "Others saw what you did. You could have jumped from your aircraft, saved yourself. You stayed, steered it away from our homes. You saved perhaps 200 lives, at great risk to yourself. So, what happens now? The doctor has set your leg. Your ribs will heal. Your head wound is clean. You will recover. But what happens to you after you recover? That I do not know. The village must decide." "And you?" Ross asked. "What do you think should happen?" Father Wilhelm was quiet for a long moment. "I think," he finally said, "that God has placed us in a very strange situation. You are my enemy. You bombed my country, but you also saved my village. I do not know what Christian charity demands in such circumstances." For 3 days, Ross lay in the church rectory while the village debated his fate. He learned the village was called Oberkirchen, population 187. Most were farmers, a few craftsmen, no military presence. The able-bodied men were all at the front, leaving only old men, boys, and women. The debate was fierce. Ross could hear it through the walls, raised voices in the church, in the village square, in the tavern. The village was genuinely divided. One faction, led by Herr Schmidt, the village blacksmith, wanted Ross executed. "He is an enemy bomber pilot. He has killed Germans. Justice demands his death." Another faction, led by Frau Berger, the schoolteacher, wanted Ross handed over to Wehrmacht authorities. "Let the military decide. We are civilians. This is not our decision to make." A third faction, led by Father Wilhelm, wanted to help Ross escape. "He saved our lives. We owe him a debt. Christian charity demands we repay it." The debate went on. Ross listened, understanding only fragments, but getting the general idea. On the 4th day, Father Wilhelm came to Ross's room with news. "The village has decided. We will help you, but you must do something for us first." "What?" Ross asked warily. "Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, our celebration. We have little food, little fuel, little hope. Many families have lost sons at the front, but we celebrate anyway because we must. You will attend. You will see what you have saved. You will understand what we are. And then? And then we will help you escape, back to your lines, but you must see us first, not as targets, as people." Ross agreed. What choice did he have? December 24th, 1944, Christmas Eve in Oberkirchen. Ross was helped to the church on crutches. His leg was in a splint, his ribs taped. Every movement hurt, but he could walk. Barely. The church was packed. Every villager was there. 187 people, all staring at the American bomber pilot who'd crashed in their fields. The service was in German. Ross understood none of it, but he understood the emotion. These people were terrified, hungry, desperate. But they were singing hymns, celebrating Christmas, clinging to hope despite everything. After the service, Father Wilhelm translated parts of what had been said. Prayers for sons at the front, prayers for peace, prayers for those lost, the men who wouldn't come home, the families broken by war. Then came the meal. Not much. Potato soup, dark bread, ersatz coffee. The village had almost nothing left, but they shared it with each other and with Ross, the enemy. Ross sat at a table with Frau Berger and her 3 children. The youngest, a girl maybe 6, stared at him with huge eyes. "Are you going to bomb us again?" she asked in halting English. The question hit Ross like a physical blow. He thought about all the missions he'd flown, all the targets he'd bombed, strategic targets they called them, rail yards, factories, industrial centers. But bombs aren't precise. They hit targets. They also hit houses, schools, churches, people. "No," Ross said quietly. "I'm not going to bomb anyone ever again." The girl considered this. "Good," she finally said. Then she offered him half her bread. Ross couldn't eat it. The gesture was too much. He thanked her, took the bread, and set it aside. Frau Berger watched this exchange. "She does not understand," she said. "She thinks you are a soldier like her father. She does not know you bombed cities like Hamburg, like Dresden, cities where thousands died." "I know," Ross said. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" Frau Berger's voice was hard. "Or are you just sorry you were shot down?" Ross thought about that. Honestly, thought about it. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I was following orders, doing my duty. I never thought about the people below. I'm thinking about them now." Frau Berger nodded slowly. "That is honest, at least. More honest than most soldiers." 3 days later, Father Wilhelm came to Ross with a plan. "There are American forces to the west, perhaps 30 miles. The front lines are confused. The Battle of the Bulge has mixed everything. But if you can reach them, you can return to your people." "How?" Ross asked. His leg was healing, but he couldn't walk 30 miles. "We have a wagon, a horse. Herr Müller will drive you. He will take you as far as he safely can. Then you will be on your own." "Why are you helping me?" Father Wilhelm smiled. "Because you saved us, and because—" he paused. "Because I think you have learned something here. I think you will go back to your people and tell them what you saw, that we are not monsters, that we are just people trying to survive a terrible war." "I will," Ross promised. The escape happened on December 28th, pre-dawn. Ross was loaded into a wagon covered with hay. Herr Müller, an elderly farmer, drove. They traveled west on back roads, avoiding checkpoints. 12 miles out, they encountered a Wehrmacht patrol. Herr Müller told them he was transporting farm equipment. The Germans searched the wagon superficially, didn't find Ross hidden under the hay, waved them through. At 18 miles, Herr Müller stopped. "This is as far as I go. American lines are west, perhaps 10 more miles. You must walk." Ross climbed out of the wagon. His leg throbbed, but he could manage. "Thank you," he said. "Tell Father Wilhelm thank you. Tell the village." "I will tell them you made it," Herr Müller said. "That is enough." Ross walked west. It took him 2 days. 2 days of hiding during daylight, moving at night, avoiding patrols. 2 days of pain and fear and determination. On December 30th, 1944, he stumbled into American lines. The sentries almost shot him. He looked like a German civilian in his borrowed clothes, but his dog tags proved his identity. Within hours, he was debriefed. Intelligence officers wanted to know everything. Where had he been? Who had held him? What had he seen? Ross told them. About Oberkirchen, about Father Wilhelm, about the village that had saved him instead of killing him. The intelligence officer looked skeptical. "A German village helped you escape? Why would they do that?" "Because I saved them first," Ross said. The war ended. Ross went home to Tulsa, married his girlfriend, had 3 kids, worked his father's oil rigs, lived a normal life. But he never forgot Oberkirchen. In 1985, 41 years after the war, Ross returned to Germany. He was 64 years old, retired, curious if the village still existed. It did, smaller than he remembered. The church was still there, though Father Wilhelm had died in 1963. Many of the original villagers were gone, dead or moved away, but some remained, including Frau Berger, now elderly, still teaching at the village school. She remembered him instantly. "The American pilot, you came back." "I came to say thank you," Ross said. "You saved my life." "You saved our village first," she replied. The debt was ours. They walked through Oberkirchen together. Ross saw the field where he'd crashed, now cultivated farmland, no trace of the wreckage remaining. He saw the church where he'd spent Christmas Eve, 1944. He saw the houses his burning bomber would have destroyed. "I think about that day often," Ross said. "I think about the choice I made. I could have bailed out, saved myself, but I saw your village and I couldn't let it happen." "Why?" Frau Berger asked. "We were your enemies." Ross thought about that. Same question Father Wilhelm had asked 40 years earlier. "Because I saw your Christmas decorations," he finally said. "I saw smoke from chimneys. I knew there were families down there, children, people celebrating Christmas. I couldn't let them die just to save myself." Frau Berger nodded. "And we couldn't let you die after you saved us. Even though you were our enemy, even though you had bombed our cities, the debt was real." They stood in silence for a moment, two old people remembering a war neither wanted in a village that survived because one pilot made an impossible choice. "Do you regret it?" Frau Berger asked. "Staying in the aircraft? You could have died." "No," Ross said. "I don't regret it. It was the only choice that let me look at myself afterward." Ross returned to Oberkirchen several more times before his death in 2009. Each time, fewer villagers remembered. The war generation was dying, but the story persisted. In 2014, 70 years after the crash, the village erected a small monument, a plaque describing what happened, the American bomber pilot who saved the village, the German villagers who saved him in return. The inscription reads, in both German and English, "On December 23, 1944, Lieutenant Charles Ross, USAAF, sacrificed his safety to steer his burning aircraft away from this village, saving approximately 200 lives. The villagers of Oberkirchen, in gratitude, saved his life in return." This monument commemorates not the war, but the humanity that survived despite it. Ross's children attended the dedication. His daughter gave a speech. "My father never talked about the war much. When he did, he didn't talk about the missions or the bombing or the fighting. He talked about Oberkirchen, about Christmas Eve in a German church, about a little girl who offered him half her bread, about people who had every reason to hate him but chose mercy instead. He said that day changed him, made him understand that the people below weren't targets, they were people, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. I think that's why he went back so many times, not to revisit the war, to revisit the moment when he and the people of Oberkirchen chose to see each other as human beings instead of enemies. That's the story worth remembering, not the crash, the choice. Here's what Charlie Ross's story teaches us. War creates impossible choices. Sometimes the right thing means sacrificing yourself. Sometimes it means saving your enemy. Sometimes it means doing both. Ross could have bailed out, saved himself, let his aircraft crash wherever it crashed. Standard procedure. Nobody would have blamed him. But he saw the village, saw the people, and made a choice that almost killed him. The villagers could have executed him, handed him over to the Wehrmacht, let him die from his injuries. They had every reason to hate him. He was a bomber pilot who participated in raids that killed thousands of Germans, but he'd saved them. And that created a debt they couldn't ignore. Two enemies, thrown together by chance, choosing humanity over hatred. That's rare in war. Maybe it's rare in general. The mathematics of war are simple. Kill the enemy, destroy their ability to fight, win at any cost. Those are the rules. Both sides follow them. But sometimes, for brief moments, people remember there are other rules, older rules. Don't kill if you can avoid it. Help those who help you. See people as people, not as enemies. Ross saw the people of Oberkirchen. They saw him. Both sides chose mercy. That doesn't make the war less terrible. Doesn't justify the bombing raids or the deaths or the suffering. Ross knew that. The villagers knew that. But it does mean something. It means that even in war, even in the worst circumstances, some people manage to see past the uniforms and the flags and the propaganda. They see people, and they choose to save them. Charlie Ross died in 2009. In his will, he left instructions. Half his ashes to be buried in Tulsa, where he was born. Half to be scattered in Oberkirchen, in the field where he crashed. The village honored his request. A small ceremony, maybe 30 people, Most were too young to remember the war, but they knew the story. As they scattered the ashes, someone asked, was he a hero or just a man who made one good choice? The answer probably is both. He made one choice, to stay in his burning aircraft instead of bailing out. That choice saved 200 lives. It also nearly killed him, and it created a connection that lasted 65 years between a pilot and a village, between enemies who became something else. Not friends, exactly. Not comrades. Just two groups of people who remembered that moment when they chose mercy over vengeance, humanity over hatred, life over death. That's the story worth telling. Not about the war, about the choice. The moment when seeing people as people mattered more than following orders or seeking revenge. Charlie Ross saw the village saw him. Both chose to save each other, and that's why the story matters.